And welcome back for another Control Alt Teach podcast. Matthew, how have you been?
I'm good. Week and a half back in after Christmas, so starting to all the energy's gone already.
I was a bit monotone there. Yeah.
2 weeks charging up, and then it's gone within the first couple of days.
It feels like a distant memory, Christmas. I must admit, I don't think I quite have it in me to keep on going for another 5 weeks, but I will dig it out of somewhere. But you have had several accolades the past couple of days, which I'm assuming sort of put a bit of
busy week.
Pep in your step. Yeah. Do you want to tell everyone about it?
Yeah, so the ISC Research Ed Rupter's list came out, and that was super nice to be on that list of the top. Well, I've done top 20. I don't want to say top; that's a bit big-headed. 20 people who are influencing education. Hopefully, I hope in a positive way. And then, and then today I can't. Everyone's throwing me off by getting AIEOU. It is all the vowels, isn't it? The AI in education kind of research group that's starting up at Oxford University, or University of Oxford, I think is the proper way to say it. I read the media thing they sent me, so I need to say it correctly.
You'll have to get used to that.
Today, so that's great. So it's some really cool things this week, and then obviously Ben and yourself will be at AI Education in another couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it'd be nice to see you both in the face to face again. We'll see each other a Bet next.
I was just about to say that, and then there's Bet as well on top of that, because like I said, we've got our guest will be there as well, which we'll come on to. But like I said, it's just a jam-packed sort of January of things coming out, people releasing things, and like I said, getting called out for special mentions as well. I love it on LinkedIn when I get a little mention from Al Kingsley at the moment. My heart skips a beat on a Saturday. I'm like, oh! Got a little mention.
Al Kingsley MBE. You need to say it properly.
Al Kingsley MBE, of course.
You have to get thrown in jail if you don't say it properly.
Sir Al Kingsley MBE, I think it should be.
Sir Al Kingsley, I think it should be indeed. And with that, I won't kick on because I've not achieved anything this week. So our guest, you would have heard there, the little teaser for anyone, our listeners. We have more listeners than watchers. So we do have a very special someone who we both met a year ago, I believe, for both of us, almost to the year. And we are joined by someone who is called the Ideas Guy, a real innovator in education, thought leader, speaker, Google innovator, Canvassador. I think he's got every badge under the sun, and he can now add accolade of author to that list as well. It is Ben Whitaker. Welcome to the pod, Ben.
Yeah, I am very, very grateful to be with you. Thank you for allowing me to come on.
It is our pleasure, mate. It is absolutely our pleasure. So we're going to sort of dive straight into it with the questions, and Matt's going to kick us off.
Your number one Amazon best-selling book, Ben, is called The Ideas Guy. So you start off explaining it in the book, but who is the Ideas Guy?
So really interestingly, the idea of the Ideas Guy is that it isn't me. And so, yeah, I do get introduced in that way quite regularly. And that I've done that intentionally to be able to then go, but you're the Ideas Guy. And in fact, the last sentence in the book is basically, TIG, you're it. The Ideas Guy, you're it. So I believe everybody's an Ideas Guy. And I talk about how the word guy is a gendered term or has become a gendered term, but it never intended to be. It's supposed to be anyone who is willing to embrace ideas, be curious, be courageous. They could be the Ideas Guy, male, female, old, young, wherever you are in the world. Everybody's the Ideas Guy. That's the premise, really.
So because I know that ideas is broken down a little bit more, but before we get into that, you have quite like an unusual pathway into EdTech, starting off in RE, I believe, and then moving your way into innovation. So what was that? What was that journey that took you from the one? I don't know if it's one side to the other. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. What?
The dark side to the light, whatever it looks like.
Whichever way it is,
So I was a religious studies philosophy teacher in secondary school in the UK, and interestingly, a lot of the ideas around reality and truth and how do we know what we know, critical thinking, ethics, rights, wrongs, that even about technology, genetic engineering was always part of that conversation. Artificial intelligence, robots was always part of those conversations, even 10, 15 years ago. And I'm just intrigued by that. But what basically happened was, and I'd not to be religious about this and call it an epiphany moment, but I talk about having two epiphany moments when it comes to technology. The first one was I was hand marking with a green pen because red's aggressive. Obviously, I used to hand mark essays, A-level essays every night. I was marking A-level essays all the time, and my eldest daughter said to me, "Dad, why are you always marking?" And it just hit me in because I felt like I was writing the same stuff on a regular basis, and I was having no time, and I was just. And I said to my wife, I said, there must be a better way than this. And then I found the Google for Education tools that helped for Google Classroom and getting things electronic, and it just developed and just got into that, got the Google badges and all the stuff that went with it. So that was the first epiphany moment. But the second epiphany moment was I was teaching an A-level philosophy class, and I was talking about Kant's categorical imperative, which anybody who's ever done in philosophy, it's quite interesting and quite intriguing, but it's not the sexiest topic. And I was talking about, I said, so Kant talked about this, and today we're going to talk about the categorical imperative. Categorical imperative, easy for me to say. And a young lad on the front row, Harvey Bishop, he won't mind me saying, I still see him now and again. He said, "Oh yeah, Kant's categorical imperative. I understand that. That's about his idea about universalization of maxims, and that we should treat people as an end in themselves rather than a means to an end." And he literally went through everything about the difference between hypothetical and categorical imperatives. And I was like, "Okay." And he went, "Yeah, I watched a YouTube video on that." He says, "And I've watched a YouTube video on everything you've taught us so far." And about Aristotle and Aquinas, and then he used this little lovely phrase. He went, "And you're right, sir." And I was like, "Too right, I'm right. I'm a teacher, don't you know? Of course I'm right." But it just made me realise that learners are learning regardless of me, and there's lots of different ways to do that. And what would my teaching look like in a world where YouTube, which was what the thing at the time was becoming was prolific? What was it going to change? And so that innovation, EdTech, finding out solutions that technology is an enabler into learning and an efficient enabler into learning, has exploded now for me. But they were the two key moments.
I suppose it links to the themes of your book, because you were talking way back at the beginning. You had that critical thinking, that questioning mindset, and I think that is link that with technology, and I think that pretty much is what we need now more than ever.
Yeah, well, yeah, I do think that idea of some people go down a technology route, and some people go down like a curriculum route, don't they? Not just career progression, but like the focus is around we've got to do teaching and learning and pedagogy and this and that and the other. And then other people go, yeah, but technology can solve all that. Why do we need to do all? And the answer isn't either or, it's both and. I'm reading a really great book called Both and Thinking. Seem to talk about it all the time, about we always do want dichotomy, but actually what we want is paradox and what we need. And so critical thinking as a skill to help people think a little bit differently, to look at things from a variety of viewpoints, to have a framework to say, can this be reliable? Is this trustworthy? Is it credible? Is it current? All the kind of stuff that sits with that, and then tie that to technology with, okay, well, using technology is a really good thing. We use technology all the time, but is that technology the right technology to use? Why are we using this? Is what's coming out of it good? Can we trust it? What's the source? All the things that come with it. We should be critical of the use of technology, and we should use technology to do critical thinking. So I think you're probably right. It does sit into there. And it also comes, I suppose, into that like authenticity conversation. And so like somebody who just feels like all they ever do is ask questions and go, why are we doing that? And it upsets some people. And I've been brought in as a disruptor in a number of organisations, and then when you actually start disrupting, I haven't got the badge to say it, but well done, Matthew, by the way. But when you start disrupting, people go, not sure we really like that. I don't know if we're ready for that. So, like that whole being your authentic, critical self in a good way, using technology, and then thinking about that strategically is really important.
So, back to the book, and I know as well as being the ideas guy, and as all being the ideas guy. And I think the book is one of those. It's going to take you on the journey. That if you want an ideas guy at the beginning, you'll be one by the end. But you break it down into a framework, a handy acronym for us teachers as well. So could we just explain that to us? Well, what does the ideas part of the ideas guy mean?
Yeah, of course. And there's more acronyms in education than anywhere else, right? Well, I thought that until I realised my wife's a police officer. Mate, we are not even scratching the surface. Literally, there's something for everything. But anyway, yeah. So ideas is split into five things. I is for innovation. It's not just technology innovation. It's about new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. So innovation is the I. The D is digital. So the technology stuff that we've talked about, as well as like the digital marketing elements that I do and other bits that sit in there. The third one, which it all centers around, is education, which makes a lot of sense because that's what I care passionately about, and actually realize that education is for everybody, whether you're in compulsory education or whether you're like us. And this is the best PD, right? I say that every time I'm doing my podcast. The best PD is doing podcasts, having conversations with people because we're learning all the time. The A is authenticity. And authenticity, in my mind, yes, we talk about authentic assessment. Yes, we talk about this. But authenticity is also about doing the right thing and being who you are. So I'm quite open about my ADHD journey, my journey with mental ill health, my conversation about my origin story, which are all quite interesting. Trying that, being that authentic, genuine self is that one. And then the S bit is about strategy. So I'm well known for banging on about culture first. I've not come up with this idea, but culture first, then strategy, then policy. But I'm very much a believer of what Peter Drucker and others talk about. But I do think a lot of what we do strategy-wise is about forward thinking and thinking differently, as opposed to just, I've always done it like this, or I'm going to throw a few tweets out, or I'm going to do this about my life, rather than thinking about a plan and looking through a strategy. So that's what it is: innovation, digital, education, authenticity, strategy.
One of the things that stood out to me, because I've read through the book and it's absolutely awesome, is
thank you.
One thing that still is like, you don't always have to be the first person that comes up with the idea. You just have to have something that you're gonna bring yourself to the table. And one of the things I took from it, and I'm probably really badly paraphrasing several ideas about, you just what someone they might just be waiting for what you've got to bring to the table. And I thought that came through in quite a few of the stories you told in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad that that's come out, because as you, and I know that possibly what will come up is some of the people that are discussed in the book haven't got a whiter than white background. They don't do everything perfectly, but a lot of these were also not first movers, and they learned from others. And the principle of the book is that we can learn ideas and develop ideas and apply other people's ideas into our life, and we don't need to be originals, although that's really, really important. We can stand on the shoulders of giants. It's the issue that we have is when people don't acknowledge that, and they think that their idea is the only idea and they're the first person that's got it. Well, there's nothing new under the sun. There's a famous philosopher from many, many moons ago that said there's nothing new under the sun, and there isn't. Somebody else has probably thought about that. They might not have printed it like you've printed it. You might have got the badge and the URL that says that's mine. But realistically, we're just an accumulation of lots of ideas and lots of people. So I talk about this quite a lot when I talk about curating resources rather than creating resources. Why would we reinvent the wheel when there's other people that are doing it? Let's work with it. Let's develop it, and then that actually then creates that culture, which I know you guys are keen on, and I see it every day in what you do when I'm watching what you do from afar. It's a collaborative mindset, which is that my ideas are one set of ideas, but there's other ideas that I need to learn from, and that disposition of learning and collaboration, curiosity, then actually helps us all do better.
Yeah, because it can feel sometimes, like you said, you take a bit of them, a bit of this, and a bit of that, and you've kind of got it in the background. And teachers are very much now, I'd say, in the last sort of 5 years, way more open to share resources than probably previously they were. And it can feel a little bit like, oh, well, it's theirs, and I've taken it, I'm passing it off my own. And like you said, it's not that at all. It's that sharing is caring. We're all helping each other, and it's taking those ideas and then putting your spin on it. From a DT point of view, there is nothing new. You're only ever improving upon something else that you may not have even been aware existed or has already come along. It's just a case of you putting your sort of extra little spin on it and passing it on for someone else to do the same.
Absolutely, and like even it's that admission of that, and it's being okay with that I don't need to have all the answers. The answers are in the room, and if they're not in this room, somebody will have a connection to somebody. I have a mate who runs an organisation, a charitable organisation called Six Connections, based on that idea that there's somebody that's connected to somebody that's connected to somebody, and we're better when we work together on that. And just that coolness that like hold things lightly, that I am not the first person who's done a podcast. I'm not the first person who's written a book. I'm not the first person who's tried to teach year 8 students on a Tuesday afternoon. And also not the first person who's having to try and navigate technology, which is what I know comes up in a lot of your podcasts, right?
And that's the thing. It's not that. It's then how you sort of come from it. And you are someone who is all about that, about asking better questions to pose that next step of how do we move forward? How do you go on? So what's that one question do you think educators should be asking themselves when they're using tech in the classroom?
Oh, great question. Well, you've set me off on something here. You know that, don't you? You know you've set me off. It's not like I think you probably knew that when you're going to pause it. So you've set me off. So I think the question that we should be asking is, what problem is this trying to solve? I say this all the time. We go to bet next week, or whenever it is, we go to bet. And when you go to bet or other conferences like it, there are lots of solutions. In fact, the phrase is often called EdTech solutions, technology solutions, business solutions, finance solutions. We're all talking about solutions, and I'm not sure that everybody's asking what problem are we trying to solve. And so we see a whole host of amazing technology, and then you go, yeah, but what problem is it solving? Did anybody ask for it? Did you ask a teacher whether that was useful? And so, when as teachers at the chalk face, and I admire both of you two and the millions around the world that still do that, because even though I did that for as long as I did, I'm not in the classroom with students all day every day anymore. Like, if a technology is available, the first question I should be asking is what problem is it trying to solve, and is it so therefore is it the right technology? And then we start asking other questions around data protection and safety and ethics and does that fit with other things that we've already got, and how is it going to push the needle forward? Is it going to, like, we ask all them questions, but fundamentally it's asking a question of what problem is this trying to solve, or is this just a solution looking for a problem, which is I see that more than we probably should do.
Do you think maybe then, sort of, obviously we bring it up probably every episode, the rise of AI, people are probably falling into that trap more and more now? Or do you think, because I know yourself, a lot of prominent figures talk about this, go back to the problem, what's the cause, what's the problem, but is it still too easy to get sucked into that, just looking at the solution and the new fancy thing?
Yes, I think it is. And I think the promise of AI that people have, which is that it's going to save you time and that it's going to make things faster, and then it's going to give us personalised learning, everybody. And it's going to make sure that every young person gets a career person. Well, sometimes if you step back and ask those critical questions around that, it causes us even greater headaches because, okay, right, we've said this before, and I know a few of you commented in this space recently. What time are we saving? We're saving time. Then what do we do with that time? We fill it with more emails, more tasks, more meetings, more teaching, more projects, another book to write, That's what we do. That's because we save time, and then AI saves us time and then creates more problems. But then in the same way, like, everybody's looking for a golden bullet. Silver bullet, not golden bullet. That's the different one. Everybody's looking for a golden goose and a silver bullet, but we're looking for a silver bullet. And AI, I think I've said this a few times, and it won't be. If anybody's heard me before, you'll know that I've said this a few times, which is that AI is the most disruptive technology that I think that we've ever seen in history. It certainly has the potential for that. And I know that sounds like a big statement, bigger than the printing press, bigger than the internet, bigger than social media, because the reason why is because it learns from itself and it grows without human input. So as a disruptive technology and the technology that has the biggest impact, that's what I see differently here. But interestingly, when it comes to teachers running into AI or running into technology solutions like that, I think the intention is always good. We want to help students achieve better. We want to save ourselves some time. We want to do this in the most cost-efficient way. But sometimes that then creates other questions that come into it. So I would agree. And there's a lot of the AI, you know how I've gone here, the AI skins or the AI like button pushers,
The rappers.
rappers. I think sometimes they become... I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying I've used them. I know other people that use them, and there's a lot of really good people that are developing them. I don't want to de-skill teachers, students, leaders by just having rappers. Although I do like them. I just want to make sure that they're in context.
And again, it all comes from that asking sort of questions thing of questioning your practice. And I'm going to bring it back because I got a bit I span off there as well and brought up the AI again. But I'm going to bring it back because you have as well with along the question side is the ideas cards. Which we saw last year, and they've been out now for quite a while. And so what sort of inspired you to do that and bring that out as a deck, as a different kind of medium, I suppose?
So if I'm being really honest, the reason why the cards came out is because the book was ready, but I needed to find the right person to publish it. And interestingly, and this sounds really, really, really like backwards, that the takeaway elements at the end of each chapter, which I know that will come up at some point, the applying this in practice, are all the titles of each one of the cards. So Unleash Collective Genius or Stay Curious or Encourage Self-Learning. They are like the titles of the cards. And I had those takeaways ready to go. But what I wanted to do is then allow people to use those takeaways to then turn them and think, where do we reflect on that and ask a question? I've found that questions that force us to reflect and force us to think about why we're doing what we're doing and asking us about deeper elements than just what am I teaching today and what am I trying to achieve, but a question that is from that one of these cards. Just happen to have them on my desk because I use them. I use them personally. It's not just something that I sell. So this one is about foster user centricity. And then the question says, when was the last time you asked a customer, client, colleague, or friend whether what you are doing is working for them? Well, that really makes you go, it's not just saying, when was the last time? Okay, last Tuesday at 7:00. Like, it's not really. That's not really the answer. It's making you go, do I ask enough people about whether it's working? Is this? When was the last time you as a teacher asked the students whether what you were teaching them, not just what you were teaching, but also how you were teaching and when you taught them was working? Well, imagine that as a process. You think about it as a business where the last time somebody sold you something and they went, could I just have 5 minutes with you just to talk about why you chose this product and why you like this one and whether it's working for you? That's a different way of doing business, a different way of doing education. So the principle of the cards is to help people ask the questions and to give questions, but then facilitate that ongoing conversation from the takeaway. So I don't want here's Elon Musk, here's his takeaway. That's it. So then how do we take those takeaways, but we then turn them into questions and we ask ourselves, what does this then look like on an ongoing practical basis?
So what's sort of been the most creative or unexpected, say, outcome from the cards you've had so far? Somebody using them in a really cool way.
Well, two. I'm going to give two examples if that's all right. First one is, so I run a marketing network called the Marketing Meetup. It's a big. Well, I don't run it. It's a big global organisation, and we just run the one in Lancashire where we're from. And we decided that we were going to use the Ideas Guy cards as part of that, and so, without anybody knowing, we pulled out a box and then we just started asking our panelists or our speakers to answer that question. And like some of them were like really the deep questions. And some people were like, I'm a little bit think. And so what we did is we got them to give their thoughts on that from a business perspective, marketing perspective, and then we got them to sign them. And what we started doing is we're creating a display where all the people who have spoken at these different events have signed these cards. And by the end of our season, we're going to be able to then pull that together into this is what people were saying, this is how, and this is who said it. That's the first one. My favourite example of doing this was when I don't want to give the game away because I know that they might. So I was working with a group of students, and I was thinking, okay, so a college brought me in and said, we've got a group of students who are involved in this curriculum area. We're struggling to engage, and we thought that having some conversations and questions with you would really work. And what made it really powerful is I just brought the cards out and then just went, okay, we can use we can talk about the framework. I have a framework that we can work through. We can work through that. Or what we can do is just get a deck of cards out. I'll shuffle them, and then let's just pick one. And they all went away, and then they wrote their own answer to it, and then it became a really lovely collaborative piece where they were speaking and talking to each other. And when somebody said that, one of them questions came up about when was the last time you asked somebody whether what you were doing was working for them. One of them was talking about their relationship with their parents. Another one was talking about how when they were a swimmer, and they were talking about how their swim coaching was working, and then interestingly they started then going, okay, well, have you ever told if you've not told them, is it important that you tell them? And then somebody said, yeah, but how do you tell your swimming coach that? And then they were like, well, why don't we do? And I'm just sat there and I'm thinking to myself, this is I'm not even here. I don't even need to be here, because it then spun off into something. So you're working with a group of students. That was magical. And yeah, I'd love to see more of them. That's where when they do that and the students are engaged with it, it's just powerful.
Yeah, because I use them with students. I've got a deck. Mine are at work. Mine are on my desk at work, and I usually I haven't done it since we've been back after Christmas. I need to start again. But I'd shuffle it, get a student to pick one. Even got a colleague of mine who I shared an office with to pick one, and it was about connecting with someone he hadn't connected with a while, and he ended up calling his brother and having a long chat with him, and he hadn't spoke to him in like 6 months or something. So nice to have a little nudge with a good question every now and then.
See, I've got the wheel from your workshop previously, the interactive one, and so I now put one of those questions, I spin the wheel, and I chuck it in our bi-weekly one-to-ones with members of the team, just to throw it out there, just to see the responses. And like I said, sometimes it's a lovely thing to talk about, and it doesn't necessarily affect anything. But there's been about, I'd say, at least 4 or 5 times where it's led me to go, because of their response, I've changed how I manage them, how I do things, or how we do stuff as a process. And it's just a lovely conversation starter to really kick in sort of that deep reflection. So, like I say, I imagine there's loads of people out there who've had just completely unexpected responses to it.
Yeah. That's really that's lovely to hear those, and I think it's that vulnerability piece, right? Sometimes I think what tends to happen is if you're asking a question that's reflective like that, it takes you from being I'm on an attacking conversation, I'm trying to win, to being I'm now being introspective and interesting. When you start asking questions to yourself and having conversations with yourself, it's interesting how then your way of interacting with others shifts, and it because you then start realizing I've not got it all together either, and because I haven't got it all together, then you have a little bit, I don't know if you want to say this, but you have a little bit more grace for other people, a little bit more just realizing that it's all right, the world didn't end. Like things have not. Yeah, that doesn't mean that we get away with stuff. It doesn't mean that we let things go that need to be dealt with. But sometimes we major on things that we probably don't need to, and that's okay to just to go. We'll do this differently.
So, in the book, and you've teased it a few times, there are quite a few people that might be seen as a little bit controversial. And I'm talking about, I know from reading Steve Jobs' autobiography, and if you watch the biopics of him, great innovator, not always a nice guy.
Yeah.
And currently in the current climate, we've got quite a famous person who's mentioned in there, old Elon, who seems to be getting his money's worth out of Twitter at the moment.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep.
They're in there, and I think you can learn lessons from them as well. And what by having those people in there, and I know you probably wrote about them in safer times, but what can we take from them being imperfect people in their journey?
Yeah, well, interestingly, I did write about them, and I already had a caveat because I knew, not necessarily that they were. I didn't know that Elon was going to be Trump's right-hand man and then be talking about sacking a British Prime Minister on like blooming heck. He's caused a problem, and some of the others that are in there, excuse me, yeah, they're not perfect, and I do try and caveat that a little bit. But the principle in it all, in fact, one of the initial quotes in the beginning bit is from Winston Churchill, who, like, if you're of a certain disposition, you realise, and rightly so, I don't ever want to learn anything from him, because what happened in colonial history and all the other, and I get it. I'm not decrying any of it. I'm really not decrying any of it, because I do know that. But I've written a piece that's coming out later on this week, as we're recording this, and I've been really wrestling with writing something around the idea of the solution to misinformation or bad information is not censorship. It's not banning it.
Yeah.
It's better information. And the example I've talked about, and I just hear where I'm going with this, and you're thinking, how did this come up? The example I'm talking about is there's a 2016 film called Denial, and that film has got Timothy Spall in it, Rachel Weisz in it, and it's talking about how there's a Holocaust denier who basically said it didn't happen. That's who Timothy Spall plays him in the thing, and he took a journalist to the High Court because of a defamation, because he said that she called him out, and interestingly, the premise of the film and the book is all on the idea that this journalist doesn't suppress this information, doesn't say that Holocaust denial. What she does is systematically works through every argument that he has and gets better information. And I think, wow, that's really, and we've got to do that. We've got to do that with sensitivity, and we've got to do that really carefully, especially when young people are involved and there's safeguarding and vulnerabilities in there. But the solution to bad information or misinformation is better information. And the solution to some of the problems in the world, we can learn from people's mistakes, we can learn from their successes, and we can learn from everything in between. And we've got an opportunity really to go, yeah, Elon Musk, there's a few things. He's parenting. He's some of his financial decisions, some of the way that he speaks, some of the way that his political decisions. We might not agree with all of them, but what can we learn? And that then really, in the same way as like the cards are you be reflective, that then makes us go, hold on a minute, I'm not perfect. I've got this, and this wrong. And it's not about going, well, but at least I'm not as bad as Steve Jobs, or at least I'm not as bad as... What it's going is it's saying there's good and bad in all of us, and we can learn, and other people can learn from us. It's just that willingness to have an open hand to go, is there something I can learn? I would argue, and I'm not going to give any examples, but I reckon there's something we can learn from pretty much anybody. And if we're willing to, maybe it's how not to do something, but also there's probably a lot where we can learn how to do something.
It's spot on, because I say this to the students a lot more, especially with the way social media's gone and we've become politically more polarized from each other. Like you can't know what's going on unless you understand other people's perspectives. And we had that over here in Romania because we've got Andrew Tate's just down the road from where I live. And you've got to kind of understand what he's saying, what he's coming from, to understand, like, to counteract some of this stuff. I think you've got to understand the other person's perspectives. Otherwise, you can never meet in the middle or have a decent conversation.
And that's it, right? You're not. It's not about in any way. I heard somebody talk about the third place, and so like often you have your positions here, their positions here, and you're not. It's not about bringing another person over to your point of view. It's about sitting in a third place or standing and thinking in a third place that allows you to go, oh, what do I look at in that space? And then also, what am I looking at myself to be able to go, is there something I can take from this? And do you know what? If the answer is I can't take anything from it, but I've now learned that I don't want to be like that, then you've learned something. And then that's a success in and of itself. I would argue that even like the Andrew Tates that you're talking about there, I couldn't be much further away politically from where he is. Okay, but there's something. I don't want to use the word admirable, but there's something learnable at least from somebody like that, from somebody like it. And I'm not writing about Pol Pot and Andrew Tate and Adolf Hitler in my book. I'm not doing that. But what I'm doing is that there's something that we can take. And interestingly, if you were to talk about innovation and not mention Jobs and Musk, you'd be like, yeah, but you've not mentioned the two most prominent ones in our modern society. Surely, like it's the elephant in the room, then, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm sure I'm going to mangle a quote, but I stuck with me. It's like, the world isn't changed by reasonable people. Sometimes you need people who are going to push against the edges and say something controversial just to get a reaction sometimes. But as well as one of the main themes of the book for me reading it is about collaboration, community, and linked to that theme of ideas, and how can we as schools or organizations, how can we create that space for people where they feel safe to share an idea? Because that's scary, sharing an idea publicly. Fail, like share an idea. I've done that. I've been in meetings where they've gone, it's a free meeting, say wherever you want, to said an idea, and everyone's gone, oh, I thought this was a free space. And then to fail and then grow. So how will your book and how can we do that how can your book support us in that?
I think Stephen Bartlett talks about, and I don't necessarily think he'd come up with it. I'm 99% sure that he didn't come up with it, but he talks about failure equals feedback, feedback equals knowledge, knowledge equals power, right? And a lot of us talk about that failure is only fatal if it's final. So if you learn from it, there's a feedback from it. So I would say that bit. The other thing is about when we're in community, there's something really powerful about when people put their hands up and say, I need some help. And also something really powerful when you put your hands up and say, I've got this wrong. We've lived and we're living through a world where cancel culture and that ability that even if you hold your hands up and admit something, people are so hard on. And I think, how do we create a community where people would be willing to share and fail and to get? We probably need to have I didn't think I would talk about grace, but I think we need a little bit more of that like gracious disposition and a mindset that is saying that just because somebody's failed doesn't necessarily mean they're a failure. So we've got to think about the language. And I suppose the other bit is about holding things lightly. When I was 18, I did a year out doing like youth and community work and in a charitable organisation, and a guy was teaching something and he threw a ball at me. And my natural reaction, I just caught it because that's what I do. Like, I played sport and I'm going to catch it. There's no way that ball is going to drop. It's going to get caught. I probably did a fancy catch as well, one-handed, diving, rolling. But no, I didn't. I just caught it like this. And then he said, throw it back to me. And I threw it back at him. And he let it hit his chest, dropped to the floor, and then he picked it up. And he went, there's a difference between what you've done and what I've done. He's like, as soon as that ball's in your hand, you've got to deal with it. And it's in your hand and you deal with it. And you've got to deal with it then. It's not like you've got no freedom or time. You've got to deal with it because it's in your hand. What I did, when you threw it at me, is that I chose that it's hit me. Yes, I've felt the impact, but then I'm making the decision with that. And Viktor Frankl talks about in a Man's Search for Meaning. Essentially, his principle is that we can't always choose what happens to us, but we can choose with what we do with what happens to us. And so, a community that allows for grace and time, a community that creates boundaries where we own that. And Zuckerberg and others are getting a hammer in at the moment, and I understand there's some challenges in that. But they've been talking about like community guidelines as why they're changing what's happening on Facebook and Instagram. Interestingly, that if the community govern the community, whatever that community is, that's a school community, a edufuturist community, a podcast community. If a community governs that, we've got a vested interest to make sure that we look after those people that are in it and anybody who wants to come in as part of it. So if we govern that, not from a control, centralized, centralized element where I'm telling you what you need to do, but then we have these guidelines and frameworks where we say that's not acceptable here. And we call it out. It's not one person's job to call it out. We call it out and we protect the pack. Then there's something really powerful. And then I suppose the other bit that sits in that is that the pack, you've heard me talk about this before, that the strength of the wolf is the pack and the strength of the pack is the wolf. I've done that the wrong way around. But if we want to be as educators or as in anybody in a community, we are only as strong as the pack is, and the pack is only as strong as the individuals that are in it. So we've got a responsibility to be good members of the pack, and we've also got a responsibility to look after the pack, and that then means that we've got a corporate and an individual responsibility to do that. So in answer to how the book does that, it's helping people to think a little bit, to go, okay, we can learn from that person. Okay, this is a little bit of their biography, a little bit of their life, but this is the application in practice. And then it's then going, okay, well, let's learn this together. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And how do we bring that together? And the book's designed to have sections around those 5 themes, but then to come into that idea of, well, it's not Ben's the ideas guy. It's not Matthew or Aaron who's the ideas guy. It's we are the ideas guy. And realistically, it becomes a we then. So the ideas guy is all of us.
So I was just thinking, you just said about the ideas at the end of, because you tell a lot of really great stories. You tell a bit of a history about each person, their story, sometimes how they stumbled into the innovation that they stumbled into, and at the end you've got some takeaways. What is the aim for people? So after they've finished reading your book, they've got to the last page, they put it down. What's next? So for me, I've read it. What should I be doing now, Ben?
Well, booking me to come out speaking. No, I'm just joking. No, I think what that means is that, okay, right, you've got an idea. So you've got now your idea of, I want to write a book, or I want to start a podcast, or I want to have a baby, whatever else that looks like. Then you've got these takeaway concepts. You can take them away, but ultimately, the ideas are only as good as what you put into practice and action them. So staying curious, well, to stay curious, when I give that example, there's 5, 6, 7 things that staying curious looks like. And then in my mind, there's loads of different ways that this could go. So it could be that you get a coach, whoever that is, to help you stay accountable around that. It could be that you put something out into the world publicly on social media and say, do you know what? This is my idea. I'm being curious, I'm being brave, I'm going to tell people what that is, and I'm going to want you to help me keep accountable to that. It could be that you create a community around staying curious, and so actually the principle about it is the book is supposed to be a tool in people's hands that go, you go and turn that into a reflective journal if you want to, you turn that into a coaching conversation if you want to, you come and then put them into practice, or realistically just move further down the journey than you were before, and don't just go, oh, that was a nice idea. It's moving to that was a nice idea, and I'm going to start putting that in practice and keep myself to account for it.
And then one thing, when I was reading it, because you sent me, I got the preview before the book came out, and I was reading that at work at my desk, and it was hard to switch off. The ideas were coming so fast. Sometimes I decided to put the book down just to like walk away because I was just like, I've got too many ideas now. I need to take a break from thinking of things.
Yeah, and that's lovely. And interestingly, like a good book does that, doesn't it? I'm not saying it's a good book. I'm just saying it spins you off into thinking, oh, yeah, but what happens if I do that? And interestingly, like I'm not on a sell here, but I do a journal because for that same reason that people was like, I've got all these ideas, so I do a journal that helps people to kind of pull those things, giving them some questions to kind of structure that if they want it, or some blank pages. What I would say is that I really care about people forming and framing their ideas, and then doing something about it that makes a difference. So the reason why I still do the volunteering work that I do, the trustee work and the podcast stuff and all the other bits that aren't the day-to-day what puts money in the bank, the reason why you do all them is because you realise that you get one life and then you've got to do what you can with it. And also, if you can help people on the way, there's an enormous sense of well-being. We were talking. My daughter said to me the other day, she said, "What do you reckon my deepest fear is, Dad?" And I was like, actually, her deepest fear was dropping a phone down the grate into the sewers. That was her deepest fear. But I started going, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate; it's that we are powerful beyond measure. And I started quoting that Marianne Williamson poem that's from Coach Carter because I love Coach Carter. I'm talking about it in the book actually, and I was making me laugh. But interestingly, my aim, not that I'm like some kind of guru in that space. The aim is like it's not our deepest fear is that our lights shine out and that our ideas become something. And so I don't want our deepest fear to stay that we are inadequate and to stay that we should hide our light. I'm not interested in that. It's to go, do you know what? If you want to start a business, you've got to do some things. You've got to think about it. There's probably some principles around it, but crack on. What's the worst that could happen? So yeah. I would love Dr. Pepper to sponsor me if he wanted to, but what's the worst that could happen?
There is that feeling of sometimes a story, the right question can just be the nudge that you need. Because everyone's got that thing that they want to do, but there's always the 100 reasons why they can't do it. And I think sometimes some of the stories in the book and some of the questions in the book are those things that make you go, hang on, potentially I could put those things one side. I can make this work.
Yeah, for sure. That's 100%. Yeah.
And one thing I love talking about you is because you're so positive. You are one of those people that's always go, push forward, move forward. and we were saying about this earlier about the curating things and pulling them all together. I know you're an absolute avid reader, and it's highlighted in the book of looking at other people's work and bringing it all together to make sense of it. So I wanted to ask you, if you were to put that dinner party together of all the authors that you've read, who are the four, who's getting the invite and is coming to tea? I say tea, by the way, because you're Northern. I did that for you.
Yes. Well, whoa, mate, that is a question, right?
We'll just settle in for the next hour.
Yeah.
Wow. If I were to pick four authors, people I've read.
Authors, yeah. I do want it to be authors, yeah. Because, again, I know you probably have got that massive collection to pull from different areas, not just education, from business, from strategy and so on. So it's one of those of who's those four, who are you going to pull together to have that conversation and that discussion? Because I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that as well.
Wow. Right. Okay. So the first one, without doubt, that would have to be as an author in that space is Brené Brown. Like, obvious, because she talks about vulnerability. I care deeply in that space about that honest conversation. So Brené Brown would be the first one. I also think she'd be lovely in that. The second one, and I'm not just naming people that I talk about in a book either, is Maya Angelou. Because she is what a human being, just so kind despite horrendous life in lots of ways, just a beautiful soul who brings poetry into just magically. But then, interestingly, oh man, this is tough because there's a whole set of people that I'd want to talk about, want to talk to about everything. I would also, if I'm being really honest, I love philosophy, and I love like the way that people think. So Marcus Aurelius would probably be in that space, just purely because that's a bit left field. I know some people would say, but there's a lot it could be. But Marcus Aurelius would be creating that space because of his meditations and the way he thinks. Oh, wow!
One spot as well. And
there is one spot. Okay, who else would that book be? I know the answer to this one. Okay, it is. You guys may never have heard of him. You may well done. It's a guy called Bob Goff. Bob Goff is he's a writer in the faith space, which I'm not sure whether I'm in it anymore. I don't know, but he's a writer in the faith space, and he's written some incredible books, and all of them just seem to be kind. And what I've seen him speak a couple of times, and I've read all of his stuff, and he's just like a dad type figure who would just make people laugh, make people feel warm in this dinner party, and he wouldn't try and force anything on anybody from a spirituality, faith, religion perspective. He would just be in the moment. And the guy has an office at Disney. Like, he's in his 70s and he's got an office at Disney because he says it's the happiest place in the world. If I'm going to meet people, I want to meet people in the happiest place in the world. So I'm like, that'd be cool. We'd have it at Disney with Bob Goff, Maya Angelou, Brené Brown, and Marcus Aurelius. Yeah. I can't believe you asked me that question.
What a
like
mix!
picking children.
I know, and that's why I knew I had to ask that, because I knew, one, it would throw you in a loop because you've got probably so many to do, but I knew you'd give a cracking answer to that as well. So, like I said, I'm just imagining that little dinner table now of everyone sat around, which is just absolute madness. So, finally, just to wrap up and sort of bring it all together, because you are a teacher, you are an educator at heart. You do a lot now outside of it and everything else, but how can schools, organisations and people, how can they still work with you on that? Because that's the future of education is still at its heart what you're about.
Yeah, so they can listen. Obviously, I would talk about EduFuturist podcast is where we are pushing that in that space, and obviously the awards, the stuff that go in that space. Obviously, Matthew won an award last year, and that is up there, is it behind you?
Yeah.
Like we have. They're great opportunities to like champion and think about where the future education is going. We obviously write a newsletter and this and that and the other. But in terms of like me working, I do four things that work in that space. One is I do a lot of keynote speaking in there, which is lovely. I do love presenting as long as it's got some kind of practical element and that people can go away and think about it afterwards. I facilitate workshops, whether they're online or in person. So I'd love to support that. The third thing that I never thought I would get into, because I was coached, but then realised that coaching and helping people think a little bit differently and prompting them with some questions and then just leaving like that, throwing a grenade and then going, what do you think? Is a really beautiful place. So I do have some coaching opportunities for and I support people in that space. But then the final one, I suppose, is the connecting has always been about content. So yes, I do the future education stuff, but like I want to not just EduFuturist content, but my ideas guys stuff that I write and the content that I create in there, how people can work with me really is to get involved with that, whether that's sharing that, subscribing to newsletter, letting people know that that's out there, and if there's any people who want to throw some money my way in terms of sponsoring of that, you can do. But more importantly than all of it is the future education. Like I am at heart, if you took any of those other elements IDAS away, took them away, that he has to stay because learning is not just about school. And I am curious. I'm really, it's kind of what you said that about, like, you've got so many things going. Yeah, like, and my wife goes, Ben, why have you bought another 4 books this week? I was like, I don't know. Why have you got another Audible subscription and another Blinkist and another thing? Why are you listening to 27 podcasts all at once? Because I'm curious. I want to learn. And so the thing about that is that I'm always curious to find out what are the other ways that I can do this. If it's you've got a business or you've got an organisation and you think, we've got a project, not sure if this is for you, let's have a reach out. So I've got socials and website and whatever else, and I'd love to connect in with people.
Amazing, and that's it. And I think that's the spice of life, isn't it? Is having that variety. Because I'm the same as you. Like I said, I love the idea of having a business, and it's a whole other conversation between us about, like I said, the marketing side of it. I love the dance of sales, of getting someone on side and going through that process, and it's all something that can link to education. Absolutely, because like I said, my wife's the same. She doesn't get it. She's like, "Why are you looking at this now? Why are you looking at that?" And even when you started the podcast, she's like, "What have you got to talk about?" I was like, "I don't want to talk. I just want to listen." I was like, I want to listen. I want to get people on. Yeah, cheers, babe. And that was it. She can't believe I've done this many. She thinks I'm up here just doing God knows what. So, but it's about that of just how one thing enriches another, which enriches another, and like you said, gives energy and pulls on it. And that's what I love about whenever I talk to you. Always come away feeling invigorated, ready for the next challenge.
Thanks, man. That's very kind. Yeah, and that's it, right? We've got that responsibility to all of us. All of us, somebody we can just help and support them that way, and then the world moves in the way that we need it to.
Superb. Well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for your time, Ben. Honestly, a great conversation. Obviously, we will all meet again. We'll see each other at Bet, but the biggie is in February.
Bigger than Bet.
Yeah, bigger than Bet. AI Education over in Bucharest. So if you haven't got your tickets, please do get over. Where can I get tickets, Matthew?
Our school, Cambridge School of Bucharest. If you Google search that, there's a link on the main page, or it's just /education25. LinkedIn, Instagram. My wife does the marketing for the school, so she's helping me out. She's pushing it a lot.
Yeah, so, and I'll make sure we put it in the show notes as well and everywhere else on socials. So please do grab them, and we'll see you there.
See you soon.
What a guy, what a guest. Ben, amazing bloke. What did you think, Matt?
Great. Ben, the ideas guys, Whitaker.
Yeah, no, we're all the ideas guy.
We're all the ideas guy.
We're all.
But no, but the thing is that it's one of those things. Ben's got such there's just something about him that you feel like geared up when you speak to him. Like, you feel like you can start your business, you can write that post, you can go off and do whatever you were thinking you couldn't do. You feel like you can go and do it, and that's one of the great things about Ben. Like book 100%, but in person if you can. Because we both seen him do his stuff live, live. But Booker's the next best thing to speaking to him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, because obviously I speak as well and do trainings and public engagements and stuff, and you watch him do what he does, and it's all pieced together beautifully of how he presents, and like I said, it goes from point to story to then wrap up to a reflection, and so and it's all just pieced together perfectly, and it just hits home, and the way he presents and the way he talks is just so positive all the time, and like I said, he is just a font of knowledge. Like, you ask me authors, I'd forget straight away. My brain can't do it. It would just freeze up on me, and I know that was a nasty question. We spoke about it afterwards because it's so on the spot, but equally because he just wouldn't be able to choose. So yeah, it was a bit of a mean question, but I knew for a fact if anyone could do it and would be able to tell you, it would be him, because he's just so knowledgeable about all of that stuff. And I've got my book. It arrived today. So I know you've read it, you've seen the preview, but I am going to be churning my way through this, which I can't wait, because again, it's just a wealth of where to go next, how to go about it, and like I said, lots of grenades that he chucks in, and just makes you think.
It's one of those things when I was reading it, because I'm to talk about being dyslexic, I'm not reading's not my favorite thing to do, But I was reading it and I just plowed through it. I just wanted to turn the next page. I just wanted to hear the next thing. I wanted to read the next story. And I think we said in the pod, the only reason I had to put it down was because I had too many ideas. I had to stop, otherwise my brain was going to explode. But yeah, that was it. So I just absorbed it. It was a great read.
And that's it. And I think the biggest thing for my takeaway was that community. Of leaning on who you've got, and that's a big thing I've been working on this year, is building up that network and people I speak to and so on. Because, like I said, it for me, LinkedIn is the biggest network. It's been superb, and your accolade at the moment this week with the Edruptors coming out and looking at that list, I was looking down there, and I'm so thankful that I think about the good 6-7 people on there are got sort of connections of people I've spoken to personally and had one-to-one conversations with, and we've spoken about stuff and worked at conferences or trainings and stuff, and I feel so lucky to have that ability to lean on those people. And it makes me feel like the dumbest person in the room on LinkedIn, but I love that, because there's just so much to learn from other people, and to curate what they're doing and take a bit of this and a bit of that and then balance it up with what someone else has said, and to just pose those questions and start talking about what that solution is, what does the next step look like, what's coming up the road and so on, when you've got experts and people who are living and breathing it day to day at your disposal right there at the end of a keyboard.
Yeah, that's great. I think me and you spoke when something's come. I've had an idea, or I've need to do something for the job curriculum, and it's slightly out of my wheelhouse. I've reached out to you and Ben before, Ben Edmonds, not Ben Whitaker.
Yep. Different Ben, yeah.
Also Ben Whitaker. I had something I need to work on, and it was beyond. I was at the point where I could get 99% there, but I was like, I just can't. No matter what I ask myself, I just can't get that 1%. And I jumped on a coaching call with Ben, and within like 10 minutes, we'd got it. It's one of those things and that network is really powerful. And I think from being at the Edge of Futurist event as well, and I went to the table talk the next day, just to get around and just share. And I said in the podcast, sometimes you can be in a situation where you think you say an idea. Everyone says it's a free space, and you say an idea, and everyone just goes, "What was that terrible idea?" I feel with this community, if you say something that isn't going to land, people go, "Okay, we can see where this is going." You can see the intentions behind what you're doing, and I think everyone's there to support each other, and knowing you're posting in a safe space where you can experiment and try things, and people will support you, is one of the best things you can have, I think.
Yeah, and it just keeps that positivity of it, like you said, feeling safe to then sort of share something. Which on the flip side, I didn't say it again, Ben was talking about the sort of discourse and having those other figures in there, such as Elon, such as who else do we talk about?
Steve Jobs,
Jobs, yeah.
Super inspired by him. Didn't know all this stuff. Read his autobiography, and I was like, "Oh, bloody hell!"
Well, this is the thing: you dig into it, you find these sort of things, don't you? But for me, X is the epitome of that. I have so many people who are complete opposites to what I think, believe, and want to, and how I act and how I go about my practice. But I keep them, I still follow them, and I haven't blocked them, because I think it's so important to see what they're saying, and just to hear that and have that discourse of the understanding of what is going on out there, or what is happening, what others are saying around you, because otherwise you can get easily sucked into this kind of echo chamber of everything's lovely because everyone agrees with me, or everyone's on my side. And it's
when I dip my toes back into X, I just see people going like something blocked. Like they're not even engaging in a discussion or a debate or trying to see okay, let me see where this person's coming from. Their immediate reaction is, "You're saying something I don't like." Block.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and that's why I don't post, because it's toxic to a degree. It's gone completely off the other end of the LinkedIn, in that if you say something, the next comment is going to be someone coming back at it, or telling you you're wrong, or like I said, tagging somebody else, or retweeting it with their comments and so on, rather than having the conversation. But it's having at least your ear to the ground on that, isn't it? And like you said, looking at what the other side is saying, or what's going on, or like I said, putting yourself in a third place to see that, which I think is really important to help develop.
We spoke about EdTech as well, because you're starting from almost the ground up at your current school. And even in any initiative, like if I went to Bet next week and bought a load of VR headsets or 3D printers and brought them over, as we said, you've got to think about what you're going to do to them, and you've got to speak to someone who might never want to use the 3D printer. And I think when we were chatting I heard something Dan Fitzpatrick was saying, and it was like people are getting kids through their GCSEs with a old school chalk whiteboard and a pen. Why do you need AI? Why do you need that? And I think sometimes having those discussions with people can either you can start to understand each other, but you can also come up with a better idea because you've been challenged. And I think that's one of the things that some of the questions in Ben's book do. That his cards definitely do. They're a bit left field, some of them, and they do challenge you. And I think that's the best place to grow when you're pushed and challenged, and someone comes back at your idea. You don't block them. You have a dialogue.
And like I said, it just helps you sort of chip away at it and refine it, which is amazing. But next week we are releasing, not next week, our next pod, or in a couple of weeks' time, we have Tom Rogerson on. So he is going to be our next guest, and we'll be releasing very shortly because we have it. It's edited. It's in the locker, ready to go. We're sort of an episode ahead now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we've got a couple more guests we're trying to sort of line up as well and keep this gravy train going one a month. We're doing well, I reckon, at the
grab
moment.
them all at Bet. We'll pin them down over there.
Yeah, lots of people to nab at Bet. Oh, we might actually have a live in-person episode. I'm going to see how we piece that together.
I'm with somebody. The school have sent me with someone, so I think I might need to sneak away, but we'll see what we can do.
I'm with my network manager again as well, talking about ground up.
With my network manager, we can sit them down together and we'll run off and do a podcast.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
We can have a network manager off. And we can
let's see whose is better. We can trade on like top trumps.
Maybe we'll have them as the guests.
Yeah, let's do it. Network manager special. Why not?
There we go.
Right. Have a great time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll be back with another one. Bye, all.
Bye.